Have you ever wondered what people are willing to sacrifice to cling to eternal youth and flawless beauty? In Hollywood, where the glitz and glamour shine and youth is considered a precious asset, the pressure to be perfect can be suffocating. One small change, then another, until beauty is no longer a choice, but a vicious cycle with no escape. Behind those seemingly perfect faces are little-told stories, lingering insecurity, risky decisions, and sometimes an irreversible price to pay. Some lose their place. Others gradually lose their true selves. In this video, we will look into the hidden side of perfection, where the line between confidence and obsession becomes thinner than ever, and explore stories that will make you think, does being more beautiful truly bring more happiness? There are people whose mere presence is enough to brighten everything around them. Goldie Hawn is one such person. For over half a century, she has not only been a movie star, but also an icon of joy, warmth, and rare positive energy. Her radiant smile, vibrant eyes, and natural demeanor have brought Hollywood to life in a unique way. However, even the brightest lights are not immune to the passage of time. As the years go by, and with increasingly stringent standards for youthfulness in the entertainment industry, maintaining one's image becomes unavoidable. For Goldie Hawn, as with many other artists, aesthetic choices have gradually emerged, sometimes obvious, sometimes merely speculative. Every change on her face draws attention. Is it the effect of modern beauty treatments, or simply a combination of lighting, makeup, and the natural marks of age? But perhaps the answer isn't the most important thing, because Goldie Hawn's beauty has never been solely about her appearance. It lies in the emotions she conveys, the gentleness, joy, and approachability that audiences always feel. Even as her appearance changes over time, that distinctive light has never faded. Off-screen, she chooses a slower pace of life, dedicating more time to her family, her longtime partner, Kurt Russell, her daughter, Kate Hudson, and meaningful activities like the Mind Up Foundation, which focuses on improving the mental health of young people. Goldie Hawn's story isn't about fighting against time, but about learning to walk alongside it. Because after all, there are values that don't need to be held onto, because they never really left in the first place. Some people dedicate their entire lives to pursuing beauty, and others, like Linda Evangelista, have become the very definition of it for an entire generation. Linda, the name that dominated the runways of the 90s, with her captivating angular face and limitless transformative abilities, was not just a supermodel, but the ideal role model that the entire fashion industry aspired to. Each appearance was more than just a show. She redefined the standards of beauty. However, this woman, who once stood at the pinnacle of perfection, became the target of the very standards she once represented. A seemingly simple decision, choosing a non-invasive beauty treatment advertised as safe, quick, and low risk, subtly altered her body in ways no one could have predicted. Not in a positive way, but rather in unexpected ways. The rare condition known as paradoxical fat hyperplasia turned the promise of improved appearance into a difficult journey. For the first time, the woman who had once been completely in control of her image in front of the camera faced a feeling of losing control. Linda gradually withdrew, not only from the spotlight, but also from public attention. But when she reappeared, it was no longer simply the image of a beauty icon. Instead, she became a voice for less discussed experiences, a reminder of the dark side that the beauty industry sometimes fails to address. Because after all, the pursuit of perfection doesn't always yield the expected results. And sometimes, what is most profoundly affected is one's own self-perception. There are voices that, simply by their sound, transport listeners back to a realm of memories. Kenny Rogers was more than just a singer. He was a part of the memories of millions with his warm, deep, and experienced voice. Through songs like The Gambler and Islands in the Stream, he didn't just sing. He told stories, conveying simple yet profound life lessons. However, time, something no one can escape, gradually leaves its mark on the artist's face. In an era of sharp images and demanding stage lights, every small detail becomes clearer than ever. The pressure to maintain a youthful appearance therefore silently grows. And Kenny Rogers, a man known for his sincerity and composure, is no exception to this. He didn't seek drastic changes, just a few subtle adjustments, a skin-tightening procedure, a touch-up around the eyes. The choices seemed reasonable and not too different. But sometimes those small changes inadvertently removed the familiarity that had become synonymous with his image. When the public looked at him, they still recognized Kenny Rogers. But the feeling of familiarity seemed incomplete. Even he himself shared that he wasn't entirely comfortable with those changes. However, his story doesn't end with regret. Because what made Kenny Rogers who he was never just his appearance. His voice, the thing that touched people's deepest emotions, remained unchanged over the years. He still stood on stage, still told his stories, and continued to connect with his audience as he always did. When he passed away in 2020 at the age of 81, what remained wasn't discussions about his appearance, but a musical legacy that will live on forever. Because after all, a person's true value lies not in their appearance, but in the emotions and impressions they leave on others. There are people born to be remembered in history, and there are others who, without seeking it, become the focus of debates surrounding beauty and the marks of time. Cayetana Fitzjames Stewart, Duchess of Alba, is more than just a royal figure. She embodies power, heritage, and the opulence preserved for centuries in Spain. Possessing dozens of titles, magnificent mansions, and an invaluable art collection, she seems to have it all. Except for one thing no one can hold on to forever: youth. In the public eye, she is always striking, bold, and full of personality. Yet, like everyone else, time leaves its mark with each passing year. Initially, these were subtle changes, efforts to maintain a familiar image. But over time, the interventions became more frequent, from facelifts to other beauty treatments, gradually altering the once soft and delicate features of her aristocratic face. Her story didn't end there. A rare disease, Melkerson-Rosenthal syndrome, also affected her appearance, causing swelling and facial disfigurement. At that point, the line between cosmetic changes and health problems became blurred. The public observed, but not everyone fully understood what was really happening. Amidst the scrutinizing gazes and countless rumors, one thing about her never changed: her freedom and strong personality. At 85, when many chose a peaceful life, she surprised the public by marrying a much younger man, not to prove anything, but simply to live according to her own choices. She passed away in 2014, leaving behind not just titles or wealth, but also a thought-provoking story about beauty, time, and the right to live life the way one wants. Because after all, no matter who you are, an icon, a legend, or a duchess, time spares no one. And what ultimately remains is not how hard you tried to preserve your youth, but how authentically you lived. Born into a family whose fame has become legendary, sometimes it also means spending your whole life trying to escape the shadow of others. Toya Jackson grew up in the bright lights of the Jackson family, where talent was the standard, but comparisons never ceased. Especially when her brother Michael Jackson had reached a global icon status that almost no one could reach. Entering the 1980s, LaToya strived to forge her own path. She pursued music, tried her hand at acting, and appeared in public, hoping to be recognized as an independent artist, not just Michael Jackson's sister. Her album, My Special Love, brought her significant achievements, enough to prove that she had her own voice in the entertainment world. However, in Hollywood, talent alone is sometimes not enough. The pressure of image and the ideal of a perfect appearance became increasingly apparent. And then, she began changing her appearance, starting with her nose, a not uncommon decision in this industry. Initially, it was just small adjustments, but over time, the changes became more significant. Each time, it might have stemmed from a desire for self-improvement, for greater confidence. But overall, her face gradually changed, becoming a version that even she had to learn to adapt to. The public began to notice, then to compare. Old stories resurfaced, but this time, not just about her career, but also her appearance. People weren't just looking at LaToya, but trying to find the image of Michael Jackson in every detail. And from there, a different story was created, not entirely under her control, but shaped by the external gaze. The media constantly mentioned her transformation, the public asked questions, and gradually, her journey, her efforts, and her personal choices were overshadowed by a single question. How much has she changed? Over time, LaToya gradually emerged from that whirlwind. She no longer tried to explain or justify each change, but chose to tell her story in a gentler and more authentic way. Now, she appears less frequently, more discreetly, but perhaps closer to her true self than ever before. Because sometimes, the biggest challenge isn't changing to become perfect, but staying true to yourself in a world that always expects you to be someone else. There are choices made in a moment, but their effects can last a lifetime. Lisa Rinna didn't embark on her journey wanting to be a controversial figure. When she was very young, what she sought was simply to feel confident and comfortable with herself. In Hollywood, where beauty standards are virtually limitless, she believed that a small change could make a big difference. And in 1986, she made the decision: silicone injections into her lips, hoping to create a unique look. For years, that choice seemed to work. Her full lips became her defining feature, making her stand out and easily memorable. Her image appeared on many platforms, and her smile became a familiar part of the public's life. But the human body doesn't always react the way we want it to. Over time, the effects began to show. Her lips, once a strong point, gradually became unnatural, causing discomfort and affecting her self-esteem. What once brought her confidence now became a source of constant worry. After years, she decided to make adjustments, trying to fix what had changed. But things don't always go back to how they were before, and the journey continued. Like many in the entertainment industry, she continued to try different beauty treatments, gradually searching for a better version of herself. However, the changes gradually made her expressions less natural. The pressure now came not only from herself, but also from the constant attention and opinions from the outside. What makes Lisa Rinna's story remarkable is her honesty. She doesn't shy away from her past, but is willing to share that not every decision yielded the expected results. Currently, she's aiming for a simpler and more authentic way of expressing herself. Her story isn't just about appearance, but also about her journey of realizing the true value of accepting herself. Because sometimes, the hardest thing isn't changing for the better, but learning to appreciate who you are. There are stars who don't need to try to stand out, because their natural beauty is enough to make them shine. Joan Van Ark is one such person. During the golden age of American television, she made a lasting impression with her role in Knots Landing, where her gentle beauty, expressive eyes, and elegant demeanor became the ideal image for many viewers. But time, silently and persistently, always brings about inevitable changes. In an industry where technology is increasingly sharp, where every small detail is clearly visible on camera, natural beauty, once an advantage, gradually became a burden. And like many other artists, she started with a very subtle adjustment, a change to her nose, subtle enough that almost no one noticed. But sometimes a small change opens the door to the next steps. Over the years, other interventions gradually emerged: skin tightening methods, eye area adjustments, treatments to maintain youthfulness. Each choice stemmed from a desire to preserve the familiar image in the eyes of the audience. But paradoxically, these very efforts sometimes overshadowed the unique features that had made her special. Her face still bore the familiar features, but the feeling was no longer the same. Her smile was still there, but the warmth seemed to have changed in an indescribable way. As television entered the era of high-quality images, the public's gaze became more discerning. People no longer just talked about roles or talent, but began to pay attention to the smallest details on her face, and from that, a reality gradually became clear. As time passed, even once-admired names could be reevaluated, not for what they had contributed, but for how they appeared now. Joan Van Ark rarely speaks about her personal choices, but that very silence partly reveals the pressure many older artists face, because sometimes what worries people isn't getting old. It's the feeling of having to change themselves just to continue to be remembered. Some people try to hide the changes that come with time, and others transform those very changes into an unmistakable signature. Dolly Parton is one of those rare exceptions. For over half a century, she has been not only a legend of country music, but also a cultural icon with a distinctive image, vibrant blonde hair, bold makeup, and a style that almost defies conventional norms, as if she were living in a world of her own making. But what sets Dolly apart isn't just her appearance. It's how she perceives and masters it. While many artists choose silence or avoidance when discussing cosmetic procedures, Dolly confronts them openly, even humorously. She doesn't hide it. "What needs fixing? I'll fix it." A half-joking, half-serious statement, yet it clearly reflects her life philosophy. Not fighting against time, but actively shaping how she changes with it. For Dolly, cosmetic procedures like nose jobs, eye surgery, facelifts, and other rejuvenation methods are not signs of insecurity, but deliberate choices. She builds her own image, not to be like anyone else, but to become the most distinct version of Dolly. And over the years, these changes haven't diminished her identity. On the contrary, they've made her image even more recognizable and unforgettable. However, Dolly Parton's story has never been solely about her appearance. Behind that striking exterior is a multi-talented and influential woman, an artist, a businesswoman, and someone deeply committed to community work. From music to educational support programs, she has left a profound mark on the lives of many people. Today, in her 70s, Dolly continues to create, perform, and spread positive inspiration. Her story isn't about chasing beauty to retain youth, but about understanding herself and bravely living true to herself in front of the world. Because sometimes, confidence doesn't come from how natural you look, but from accepting and fully expressing yourself. If this video sparks your interest, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. Where do you think the line is between self-beautification and losing yourself? Does true beauty come from within? Don't forget to like if you found this content valuable and subscribe to join us in exploring the profound stories behind the glamour of celebrities. See you in the next video, where we'll not only admire the looks, but also understand the stories, choices, and real people behind them.